The views on a Breath of Fresh Air podcast reflects the parties involved, and we encourage you all to use it as a conversational tool that will lead to personal studies of your own.
Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Welcome to a Breath of Fresh Air podcast. Here with your hosts, Earl Roberts and Nakhaz Gay. As a young person, Christianity can be so foggy, like smoke in the mirrors and so unclear. But we're here to bring you a breath of fresh air.
Then I lifted my eyes and I looked, and behold, a ram, which had two horns, was standing in the front of the canal. Now the two horns were long, but one was longer than the other, with the longer side coming out last. I saw the ram butting westward, northward, and southward, and no other beast could stand before him, nor was there anyone to rescue from his power. But he did as he pleased, and magnified himself. While I was observing, behold, a male goat was coming from the west, over the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. He came up to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing in front of the canal, and rushed at him in his mighty wrath. I saw him come beside the ram, and he was enraged at him, and he struck the ram, and shattered his two horns, and the ram had no strength to withstand him. So he hurled him to the ground, and trampled on him. And there was none to rescue the ram from his power. Then the male goat magnified himself exceedingly, but as soon as he was mighty, the large horn was broken, and in its place there came up four conspicuous horns toward the four winds of heaven. Out of one of them came forth a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. It grew up to the host of heaven, and caused some of the hosts and some of the stars to fall to the earth, and it trampled them down. It even magnified itself to be equal with the commander of hosts, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. And on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with the regular sacrifice, and it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, "How long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply, while the transgression causes horror, so as to allow both the holy place and the host to be trampled?" He said to me, "For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored."
Today we dive into the fascinating and prophetic visions of Daniel 8. In this chapter, we witness a powerful vision that reveals the rise and fall of empires. Join us as we unpack its symbolism, understand its historical significance, and explore what these ancient prophecies mean for us today. Get ready to be intrigued and enlightened by the profound revelations in Daniel 8. As always, be blessed and enjoy. All right, welcome back to another episode of a Breath of Fresh Air podcast here with your hosts,
Nakhaz Gate.
and Earl Roberts. All right. So last week was episode 200, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode on faith. I think it was actually a really good discussion and just grappling with the concept itself of faith. I mean, we were heavy in Hebrews and James, but it was a good discussion overall.
I agree. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I was just saying I enjoyed it. Just
Yeah. So this week we are back in Daniel. Going back over the prophecies. We are going to be in Daniel chapter 8. It's gonna be really interesting. Um, and again, it builds off of some of the previous prophecies and a little bit further more explanation, but it's gonna be good. And some important things are said in this chapter that sets the basis for some other things to come that might be spin off on an episode on its own, just describing some of these things. But we'll see where it goes, man. God will guide, and hopefully you guys are blessed. And again, engage in the conversation with us. Let us know your thoughts on the prophecies, and we'll go from there. I don't know. This episode might be a little long, so I was trying to let's just jump into it and just go with the describing. And it's crazy. It's a short episode, but it's it's a short chapter, but it's packed.
Yeah, it's packed and it connects to other things, past and future in the
Ex-
Bible. So
exactly. I was trying to download one or two pictures before for visuals, but we'll see. I even got Google Earth popped up. All right. So let's see. In Daniel chapter 8, verse 1, reading from the New King James Version. So in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me for the first time. So if we go back to Daniel 7, the first vision came to him in the 1st year of King Belshazzar, right?
Yep.
So this one, depending on how, we don't have months. So it's either a full 3 years after, or it could be a 2 years after, depending on where it lines up, because one was in year 1, now it's in the 3rd year. So it really depends on where that lines up. But still, we see now some time has passed and Daniel got a second vision.
Yep.
And so in verse 2, I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that there was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there, standing beside the river, was a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand. But he did according to his will and became great.
Bro, do you want to read through the whole chapter and then we just
Yeah, because
dialogue from there?
it's so weird, right? Because even if we start talking, it could be like we could be taken away from some of the stuff that come later in the chapter. So I down for that. I down for that.
Yeah.
All right. So, and verse 5, and I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between its eyes. Then he came to the ram and that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram, and he moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver him from his hand. Therefore, the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up. 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, towards the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it came down, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of hosts, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down because of transgression. An army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. And then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and transgressions of desolation, and giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Verse 15. Then it happened when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning. Then suddenly there stood before me one having an appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai and said, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near me where I stood. And, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep with my face to the ground, and he touched me and stood me upright. And he said, look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation. For at an appointed time, the end shall be. The ram which you saw having two horns, they were the kings of Media and Persia. And the male goat was the kingdom of Greece. The large horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the four that came up in its place, four kingdoms shall rise out of that nation, but not with its power. And in the latter time of the king, and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall rise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully. He shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule. He shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. And the vision of the evening and mornings, which was told is true. Therefore, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days. Afterward, I arose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it.
Off top, bro, do you know how long Belshazzar reigned?
I think it wasn't more than 5 years. I think I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. All right. The reason I ask is because like a lot of these visions, they start off in the correct time frame, in the actual time frame. So last episode when we spoke, it was the first year of Belshazzar's reign. So when we see these beasts, they start off with the Babylon. The first beast represented Babylon because that was the actual time frame. What's interesting here is that they're still under the Babylonian Empire.
Yep.
But the first beast represents the Medes and the Persians. You see? And because we know that Belshazzar had a very brief reign, this was actually, this is actually plausible because it's coming towards the end of his reign. His reign might be a matter of days, maybe a year. You know what I mean? No more than 2 more years left in his reign. You catch what I'm saying? The Medes and the Persians was already rising up, starting to conquer, etc. And so I guess we could go from the top, like piece by piece, and I'll just give our commentary on it because I wanted us to read through the whole thing because some of these things we're gonna introduce, but it's gonna be established in the Bible already. You know what I mean? So it ain't like we saying it. It's like we just commenting on what was already said in the Bible. So and the reason why I wanted to make that clear is because when we get to talking about this rhyme and we say, okay, now this mean the Medes and the Persians, it can be confusing because last chapter we just say a bear, with 3 ribs in his mouth. It was the Medes and the Persians, but now we see God is giving Daniel another vision, right? Representing the time that is to come, but in a different light. One thing that scholars make note of is that the animals used here compared to the animals used in the other chapter, the animals in chapter 7 were unclean animals. We talk about a bear, we talk about a lion, we talk about a jaguar, and then we talk about this mystery beast, was the fourth beast. Now they just say rams and goats. These are actually animals that are used in daily temple sacrificing, rams, goats, etc. on the Day of Atonement. you have the scapegoat. You get what I'm saying? And I think they use another goat, if not a lamb, or a combination of both, where one is just for the sacrificing of sins, and one is for any sin that was missed. We put that goat out into the wild, and it's not to be not to be touched. Check out Leviticus. I can't remember the chapter. I want to say Leviticus chapter 16, but just Google the Day of Atonement. You're gonna get some context on lambs and goats as it relates to this chapter, I believe. So, so in verse 3, then I lifted my eyes and saw there standing beside the river was a ram which had two horns, and the horns and the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. Now, considering the fact that Gabriel says that this is the Medo-Persian Empire, it is so crazy, the imagery. The first thing I want to establish is that in Daniel chapter 7, we learn that beasts are kings, but they're also kingdoms. They're more, it's more fitting that a beast symbolize a kingdom. It could be both, but it really is a kingdom. Now, in Daniel 7 as well, we know that horns represents kings. specifically kings, right? So that's just Daniel imagery, and this is defined by Daniel. This isn't something you have to think about. They actually explain it. They say, hey, the 10 horns on the fourth beast represent 10 kings. That's how we know a horn represents kingdom. They say the 4 beasts represent 4 kings. But then also it said the 4th beast represents a 4th kingdom. So that's how we know beast means kings, but it also means kingdoms. Okay, now to be established that. So we see this one beast, which is a ram, right? And it had one horn larger than the other one. And they say the ram represents the Medo-Persian kingdom, empire, right? But the horns represent the different kings. Now the Medians had a king, and the Persians had a king. The Medians rose up first, and then the Persians came and usurped, right?
And they was,
and there was the stronger kingdom. I'll let you talk to that a little bit.
No, just piggybacking off of your point, right? Because it's crazy, right? Because think about it, we say the Medes and the Persians first, right? So you can see establishing the Medes had more dominance than the Persians.
Right.
But when you think about it in history, you think about the Persian Empire. You don't really think about the Medo-Persian Empire. You think about the Persian Empire. So again, it's just when you start thinking about it historically, the Persians clearly rose to prominence. Well, you actually think about the Persian kings. You think about Xerxes. You think about Artaxerxes. You think about Cyrus. These were Persian kings. You don't really have the Median kings too much. And so just a historical fact, you're this checked out. One kingdom clearly, they was getting pulled. At the beginning they was getting pulled behind, but at the end they was doing the pulling. They was doing the grunt work of the kingdom. And the next thing that was interesting to see to go to, right? It showed where this kingdom would push. Now I go in verse 4. It said it pushed west, it pushed north, and it pushed south. And when you think about what the Persian Empire did, they didn't really expand east. When you think about east being, just think about Iran right now, right? Because that's where Persia historically was, right? They went westward, would be heading towards Greece. They going west. South, that's Egypt. Them, they going there. And northward, they started to go northward up into the Balkans area, somewhat, but they didn't really go over to India. So it's interesting. So again, and this was years before they even happened, literally decades before it happened, because multiple kings had multiple conquests. But the Bible show what this kingdom would do, and these people weren't no God-fearing people for real, so they wasn't really reading this prophecy. But God was saying, so this kingdom, way before it happened, these are the kings that would come up after the Babylonian Empire, and here is where they're going to expand to.
And regardless if they read it or not, at the end of the chapter, it say Daniel fainted. He was sick for many days. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it. Even though they give the interpretation of it, it's bro, I just don't understand. What does this mean? There's so much information, and it's so much to consume. Nobody can say what this even talking about. It wouldn't be until these events are fulfilled that you say, oh, that's what that about. You know what I mean? Because imagine, bro, randomly, if you just get a vision of a bear and it's lopsided, it's on one side. That's unnatural, bro. Bears, if they stand up, they stand on their 2 feet, right? But you standing up on one side, your hand, I'll just say hand for the lock, just for to describe. Your hand up on the ground and your left hand and your left foot on the ground, and then your right extremity is in the air type situation. You know what I mean? And so what does that mean? What would that mean? Even if they say, bro, that represent the Persians, the Medes and the Persians. Okay, but why the bear have three ribs in the mouth and why it on the side? And so now let's look at the contrast, or let's look at the comparison. They talk about how this ram, it had 2 horns, right? But one horn was higher than the other horn. So we see lopsided again. That happens. Rams, sometimes horns don't grow to the same. Like even humans, like sometimes your right arm a little longer than the left. You don't really notice these things for real, but it does happen. But when you think about a ram, when you just picture a ram, you picture the 2 horns being very close to each other, if not symmetrical. That's the ideal way a ram should be. But what's most notable is that this is lopsided in the same way the bear's lopsided, because they trying to drive home the point that, hey, this is one kingdom, but it's going to be kind of one-sided in the way it's run. I see you was laughing.
Yeah, I was laughing. But we're really dissecting animal anatomy right now. But it's so fitting, right? Because the Bible makes sure driving home these points, you understand like what's happening, right? Because now again, now you're starting to just see how things line up. Like both, even though it was different images representing the same kingdom. One time it was silver, next time it was a bear, now it's a ram. But we've seen the same symbol, like the same instances could be taken from each one. 2 arms. The kingdom had 2. It was 2 kingdoms in a partnership trying to conquer the world. One was lopsided. The bear was lopsided. Oh yeah, the Persians was a little bit stronger. The horn was greater, come up last. Yeah, the Persians rose to power really and truly after the Medes, but they was the bigger bad boys on the block. Like even though it was multiple imageries for the same kingdom, you all see it still lines up and it's still consistent in the theme that it was trying to present about this kingdom.
Definitely. Yeah.
And
go for it. This ain't us speculating. The text says that this was the Medes and the Persians. You know what I mean? So just to drive home the parallels between the last 2 chapters.
You know what's funny? I should have double checked this beforehand, right? But I even think some ancient Persian coins even had rams on it.
Oh yeah, bro. Rams was a big thing in Persia and in Greece, bro. That's the crazy thing, bro. Like the Persian kings would even wear like a ram head
when they going out to fight. They're fighting the army, right?
Yeah. So it's man. Like the symbology. It checks out. It definitely checks out. I was reading that on a Bible commentary this morning. I was like, bro. I mean, that's interesting, bro. That's interesting. But I think the ram specifically is more so like to contrast with to be a clean animal representation of this thing compared to the unclean animals that they were showing last chapter. And as we explore Daniel a little more, I can say why that's relevant. I don't know if we can get into that today. Sorry if like leading you all I ain't gonna say astray, but if I getting your hopes up for today, but it's so many intertwined things. But like we're gonna talk about they mentioned something gonna happen for 2,300 days. We could get into it today, but it'll be more fitting if we get to this after we read Daniel 9, because some of these chapters are really so interwoven. It might start in the following chapter. You get what I say? So like, for example, we already see how the Persians took over the Babylonians in this book. That was in, I think, Daniel 6, right? But in Daniel 7, no, that was in Daniel 5, right? But in Daniel 7, we learn about that Daniel had a vision that they was going to take over situation, So like as the chapters succeed, you might get another piece of the puzzle from the previous chapter or whatever. So just wanted to just put that out there. So now, okay, so on screen, we just see the parallels between the different chapters, which kind of shows the same thing, just in different ways. One was metals, right? That was in chapter 2. Chapter 7, we see beasts, specifically unclean beasts. And then chapter 8,
and
we
this
see
graphic kind of run out of space because this technically supposed to be like right here, but just graphically going because this
I
wasn't
get
lined
it.
up
I
with
get
room.
you.
Yeah, I just got to say it for the.
Sorry to those listening online. You can't really see the visual, but Earl has up you should check out our YouTube if you really want to see, both. But yeah, Earl has this visual, and it's like an illustration of the various chapters that we have covered already, how it's showing the same 3 to 4 empires, just in different symbols throughout the book of Daniel.
Yeah. All right. So now we getting over to what are you saying about this other one? So, and I was concerning me, suddenly a male goat came from the west. And again, when you start to think about it, where would this, and we know the goat represented Greece. Where would Greece be in relation to Persia? It would be west.
It would be west. Yep.
So now you see a male goat come from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had notable horn between its eyes. And so it's interesting, right? We see, so now if we go to Daniel 7, what did we say about this leopard, how the leopard hunts? The leopard is a stealth predator and is fast, right? So now think about it. They say this goat came from the west. And just imagine something not even touching the ground. They can essentially say, no, this goat was very, very fast. Sometimes they say, like, if you look at a cheetah run, there's and each point in its stride, there's 2 points in its stride where it's not touching the ground at all. Where is one where all 4 are stretched out, and there's another one where all 4 are in, but it's still up in the air. Like, so a cheetah, one of the reasons why a cheetah is the fastest animal in the world, it minimizes the contact and friction with the ground while it runs, which is so crazy. Now we're seeing a goat.
Yeah,
go for it.
No. I wasn't gonna say nothing important.
So now we're seeing a goat that is moving so fast it is not touching the ground, and it coming with extreme force.
Mercy.
Right? And it had a notable horn between its eyes, which we know this first horn was its first king. And we know the first king of the Greek Empire, Macedonian Empire, whatever you want to call them, was Alexander the Great. And we know he was I wouldn't say a tyrant, but he was a very fast young king who conquered the known world at that time very fast, very swiftly. He did this before he was in his 30s.
Yeah. Very swift, very efficient, with much force. In this translation, it say with furious power. So, which I had seen. All right. So then he came to the ram that had the 2 horns. So now we seeing where this goat, right, which represents Greece. I'm gonna just use the nation term. So we see Greece approaching the Medo-Persian Empire, and Greece ran at the Medes and the Persian with furious power. That's representing how they overturned their empire. At verse 7, and I saw him confronting the Medes and the Persians. Yep. He was moved with rage against them, attacked them, and broke their 2 horns, symbolically destroying their empire, overturning their empire. But he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver the ram from its hand. So they completely destroyed, the Greeks completely destroyed the Medes and Persians. They didn't have a chance, and
they did what no one else could do.
Right.
And then we see after this, right? So became strong. His large horn was broken into place. With 4 notable horns came up towards the 4 winds of heaven. So again, we mentioned this last chapter when the leopard ended up having 4 heads, right? It after Alexander the Great died, some would say suddenly, his kingdom was divided between his 4 generals, right? So we had Cassandra or Cassandria, however you want to say his name, and he ruled over, basically Greece. Then this Lysimachus, he ruled over Asia Minor. Ptolemy, however you want to say his name, Egypt. That's when they starting to get the Ptolemaic pharaohs. And then Seleucus, Antiochus, Seleucus, he goes by both names. You know, these people, they had multiple names back in the day based on the different languages. But I know him as Seleucus, but he also is Antiochus. Either way, the Seleucus Empire, and he ended up starting to rule over, like, you know, Syria and Israel them. So that's kind of how the Greek Empire was split. So after the first big horn, it was 4 horns, and we see that the 4 horns, and none of them came, and out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. So how you read is like, okay, so 4 horns came out of the winds, and then out of one of these 4 horns grew a little horn. Right, and then we know we could kind of get into what the little horn represented, because we kind of talked about it last chapter as well. But it was interesting, like, because the last chapter we realized that the little horn came out of the Roman Empire, right?
Yep.
And now it's interesting that this vision doesn't really get into the Roman Empire, but it still alludes to it.
Yes. So, all right, and this where a lot of disagreements happen, because some people you see how you said, just say Antiochus, he ruled over Jerusalem and some other areas. Some people interpret the end of verse 9 as saying that this is Antiochus, because it's towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land, right? And some people believe that because they say in glorious land, they talking about Judea, which I do think that's the land what they talking about. And they saying, oh, this must be Antiochus. And it's great debate over that. I want to just be clear, just to address that. But one of the reasons why it can't be Antiochus is because when we compare all of the horns, they get worse and worse. So the first horn, there was in the Ram, right? There was the Medes, and then there was the Persians who had the greater horn, right? Let me go back to see when we get to the Ram. Then he came to the Ram. No, I'm sorry. And I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from west, right? The male goat is Greece. And it had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the Ram that had the 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power, right? So they talk about how great the Ram, the Medes and the Persians was, but then they talk about this horn that was notable, right? It was a very notable horn, and it came with furious power. But then after that, we talk about 4 horns, right? But then we talk about a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south. You catch what I'm saying? Towards the east and towards the land. So if the horn was notable, right? The horn itself was notable, but they say the little horn was exceedingly great. To me, that's putting grave emphasis on how great this horn was. So we talk about how great the Medes and the Persians was, how great the Greeks was. They had 4 horns, but then there was another little one that was exceedingly great, right? And when we consider the 4th beast in Revelation, that beast was more terrible than all of the other beasts. We had the jaguar to do his thing. We had the bear to do his thing. We had the lion with not jaguar, the leopard. I'm sorry. And we had the lion with eagle's wings that did his thing. But that 4th beast was more terrible than all of them. And so I see the parallels come about again. Not only did the 4th beast in Daniel 7 have a little horn, right? But this little horn specifically, they say was exceedingly great, great. And so another reason why I think that's even notable is because the horns represent kings specifically. Last episode, we talk about the different kings and stuff. But when that little horn come out, which was a king, when that king come up, he get real blasphemous. He start talking crazy. It was so crazy that when Daniel was looking at heaven, the Ancient of Days, he had to get distracted from heaven because that little horn was talking so boastfully.
Very recklessly.
Yeah. very recklessly, you know. And so I see very I don't want to say symmetrical, but I see very like precise comparisons between the little horn in chapter 7 and the little horn in chapter 8 that we're now talking about. And also it can't be Antiochus because Antiochus was one of the four rulers, and would technically be a fifth horn that we're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. And so let's even get into it again, right? So like the little horn, what we see this little horn start doing, right? And sorry, where was I? So out of them came another horn, which started small. Did I do it right? Okay.
You're talking about Daniel 7, right?
Oh, I am Daniel 8.
7?
I just lost my
Verse 8?
point. But yeah, you pull up Daniel 7
Oh.
because I want to like compare like what this horn did and what Daniel 7 did. So you have Daniel 7, I'll even make it easier on me.
Yeah, I can start with Daniel 7 while you look for it in Daniel 8. So I was considering the horns. It's the 10 horns and the fourth beast, which is the Roman Empire, right? And there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom three of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in the horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words, right? So they talk about this little horn, this new king who carry on like he's a man, like this king carry on like it basically speaking pompous words, basically what the text say. And then you see in Revelation when describe the little horn again, they say it speaks great blasphemies, but I guess that's something we can get into on a different time. So then we talk about the Ancient of Days was seated, his garment was white, you know, his throne was like fire, 1,000 thousands ministered to him, the courts were seated and the books were open, right? I watched then because the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So he was talking about how he was watching the Ancient of Days in heaven, and then his attention had to be diverted to the pompous words of this horn, and he kept watching this horn until it was slain, you know, and until dominion was taken away from them, and until the Son of Man came over. So, based on Daniel chapter 7, the last kingdom we're gonna deal with, or the last great king, is gonna be this little horn that is speaking of very blasphemous. So now in this chapter, the last horn that we even talk about once again is the little horn, and it's very similar. Do you have the part lined up?
Yeah, so Daniel 8 verse 10, right? And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of hosts, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away. And the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all of this and prospered. So now we see a different description of this little horn that is pretty is still consistent with what was said in Daniel 7, but now we're just seeing some other stuff that this little horn will do, right? It reaches up to the host of heaven. It casts down some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. And by him, the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the people and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. And an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. And he did all of this and prospered.
So, okay, let me, I just want to pivot. I want to pivot. Bro, forgive me, dog. I about to take a big sidestep. And we didn't really talk about this.
Just go for it.
Revelation 13. I'm about to read verse, I guess, 1 through 9. And I'm gonna summarize it real quickly. Then I stood on the side of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So now when we compare chapter 7. For those, if you did not read the chapter, and if you have not watched Daniel episode on Daniel 7, it's important to do that because all of these things are building up on one another. So now we see in Revelation, right? John is saying that he stood on the sand and he saw a beast riding up out of the sea. In Daniel 7, the same thing. It says the wind stirred up the water, and out of the water, these 4 beasts came out. What were the 4 beasts? It was a beast that was indescribable, right? It had a bunch of horns. Excuse me. That was the 4th beast. The 3rd beast was a leopard, right? The 2nd beast was a bear, and the 1st beast was a lion. So now look at what this man say. Look at what John say. He said the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. So we can see this is a combination of the 4 beasts in Daniel 7, right? And to even drive home the point, he said he saw the beast having 7 heads and 10 horns. How many horns was on the 4th beast? 10, right?
Exactly.
How many heads was on the 3rd beast? 4. How many? 4. Okay. The 4th beast had 1 head. That was the beast with all the horns, right? The leopard had 4 heads. So that's 5 heads in total. The lion had 1 head, and the bear had a head. So that's 7 heads and 10 horns. You catch what I'm saying? So when we read Daniel 7 and compare to Daniel 13, same amount of heads, same amount of horns, same animals described. This is basically saying he's combining all beasts in one. That's basically what he saw, right? And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who was able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. Now, I just want to pause there, because in Daniel chapter 7, they talk about how they talk about the little horn, and they make a mention of a times, and a half of times, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that exact text right now. I have it. I have it highlighted in my Bible app on my phone, but not on the computer. So 7 verse 25. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and laws. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, a times, and a half of time, right? Now I can go right back to that same text I just read. He shall be given a mouth speaking things and blasphemies. He was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. So let me tell you why these two things are parallel, and they're talking about the exact thing. We see the blasphemies and the pompous words, right? That's Daniel 7 and Daniel 13. They utter the same thing, right? They talk about how he shall continue for 42 months. In Bible times, right? When they say at times, they're talking about a year. A time is a year. Times is 2 years. A half of a time is a half of a year, right? So that's 3.5 years. Now, during the Israelite calendar, anyway, 3.5 years, 42 months. 42 months. You see what I'm saying? 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 6. 42 months. You catch what I'm saying? So Revelation is just recalling, it's just continuing. This is the same vision that Daniel received, but John, having been hundreds of years after Daniel, he had to be given it in a different way, because it was more things that was revealed to John by now. And when we get to Revelation, we could talk about it a little more. Even maybe at the end of Daniel, we might, do a summary of this. But I say all that to say this, right? He opened his mouth to blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. You catch what I'm saying? So now this the same little horn that is being described. And so when we look at Daniel chapter 8, we was in, I think, verse 10. And it grew up to the host of heaven to cast down some of the hosts and the stars to the ground and trample on them. He even exalted himself as the prince of the hosts. And by him, the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So now we see where he's blaspheming against God. He's going all the way to heaven. He's blaspheming his name, his tabernacle. That's where the sacrifices were being done, in the tabernacle, in the temple. You catch what I'm saying? In the holy place. And also he blasphemed his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So this is just, it's just the comparison of this last horn, this Roman system. It is talking about how the blasphemy is not only for the people on earth. It's not, I'm saying the damage he's doing is not only the people on earth, but he's also trying to start stuff with people, with God in heaven. He's also trying to blaspheme his name. He's trying to change people's perception of God. He's trying to change the very system that God put in place, tabernacle services and stuff like that. He's spreading so much confusion. And we see later where in this text where they say he would trample on the truth. He's spreading so much confusion that it is actually impacting the people of God and the way people see God. And that's his mission. These other kings, they just trying to rule the world. They might even want you to worship them type situation. But this one, he not only wants you to worship him, but he wants you to change the way. He want to change the way you see God. He want to change the things that God say, the times and laws, and he want to change the entire system of God. And that's why this horn keeps being talked about, and that's why this horn was worse than all of the other horns.
That's an important distinction. So I hope you brought that up now too.
So maybe we could go from verse 13.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can continue from 13 now, right? And we heard the Holy One speaking, and another Holy One that said to a certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. So he said, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And again, we have to come back to this because it doesn't say when this starts, right? And it doesn't say when it doesn't say when it starts, because when it starts, it's the important point, because then from then you can actually go back and calculate the 2,300 days, because we know in biblical prophecy, a day is a year, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and I just want to
go for it.
No, my bad. No, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, because I was saying, like, even back in where it was Exodus, when they was leaving and they didn't have the faith, and God was like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you guys go on
40 days.
40 days. I'll give you each day for a year."
Yeah, we see symbolically.
Yeah.
Each day for a year. Yeah, each day for a year. Each day for a year. Each day represents a year type of situation. And that's this prophetic language once again. When we read Daniel chapter 13, it's more plain. The things that we see in Daniel 7 and 8 is more plain. So we just say in verse 13 of Daniel 8, it said, where did it say? Oh, verse 12. An army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast down truth to the ground. Right? I thought this was later in the chapter, but this was right here. He cast truth to the ground, right? But look at what it say in Daniel 13, verse 8. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. It's the same thing we just see. An army was given to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices and to cast truth to the ground, right? And he had authority, and authority was given to him over every tongue and nation, and all who dwell on the earth will worship him. Those whose name had not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So, and that gives us a clue. We in the same trend of thought we're talking about, right? Okay, war was given over him over the sacrifices, and then they say, how long until the sanctuary be cleansed? 2,300 days. So when we actually approach this lesson on another day, we're going to talk about the correlation between people's names being written in the Lamb's book of life and the sanctuary being cleansed, because there's a direct parallel. That's the reason why these things come in such the same chronological order. In one text, they say 42 months. In another text, they say a times and a half a
Half a
times. You catch what
times.
I'm saying? In one text, they say, oh, it was given an army to him. The other text, they say he waged war. You see what I'm saying? Like, so it's like it's the same things are being said, but they might speak in a completely different way, you know. But these are the same points that are being brought across. That's why it's important to study Daniel and Revelation
Yeah, understand.
together
Yeah,
to get a more better
agreed, right?
understanding.
And it's so interesting, right? Because you look at a lot of different commentaries, they'll tell you it's Antiochus, right, for the little horn, and you're like, hold on. Whereas that might make sense in one instance, right? If you go back to Daniel 7, you're like, hold on, if it's the same little horn, something ain't lining up here. You go to Revelation, you're like,
Right.
oh, yeah, so it's the same little horn that taken imagery from Daniel 7 and 8 and Daniel 9. And you're like, oh, so if Antiochus fits only one of these description, but it's mentioned three other places and it don't fit these other description, how could it be him?
Right.
And that's the
Okay.
question just gotta ask. Like, especially when you read all these other commentaries, right? Like, if it's the same horn in multiple chapters of the Bible, and you could see the horn doing the exact same things in slightly different way, but you see how it's just the same imagery talking about this horn, but he only fits one of these descriptions. But he doesn't fit the other descriptions and the other time that this horn was being talked about. Then you just gotta ask yourself, okay, does this person truly make sense for this prophecy?
Right. Very true. Very true. And the thing with Daniel, you get God being very specific in the things that he's saying. And it does take wisdom. And I'll be honest with you. If I read these things just by myself, I might have a hard time, you know. That's the reason why the angel interpreted these things for Daniel. So now I can go and read it and have an understanding without having to critically think or, you know, rely on my brain to get this. But what I'm trying to say is you get one thing wrong, and it's like when you're doing like algebra and stuff, right? In your calculation, you take one wrong turn, and that could completely derail your entire outcome, you know? Um, and so yeah, like so when we think about who the Rams are, who the horns are, who the beasts are, you know, depending on who you say they are, that could really change your entire interpretation of this book. You know what I mean? The way you interpret prophetic language, that could change your entire interpretation of this book. So like when you see
Agreed.
2,300 days or 42 months or a times and a half a times, if you say them as literal days, your whole prophetic journey is going to be vastly different than if you use the year day principle to do that. And there's other places in the Bible specifically that shows the year day principle. So it's not like somebody just pulling this out of thin air. Oh, let's use a year for a day here. When we get to Daniel chapter 9, this text, that chapter changed my life. And I sincerely mean that. It really gave me a firm foundation in Christ, and it gave me all of the evidence I needed that Christ was real. You know what I mean? Because we live in a world today, and you know, going a little off topic. You know, we young people who have testimonies of God, right? But
Mhm.
even living in society today, it's so many things. It's so many belief systems that you could subscribe to. It's so many, bro. When we was coming up, Rastafarians was like the coolest thing to me, bro. They was peaceful, you know, they was honorable. They made amazing music. The marketing for them was just A+ to me. You go to
Top
school
notch.
when we was like in middle school and elementary school, Rasta belts was in style. They
Mhm.
even had Rasta lacings. People used to have stickers and pins with the Rastafarian God on them. You wear that in school, and oh, this dude is a gangster, he's a bad man type situations. Like the culture, it was very fascinating to me, right? But then you have people who they more inclined to be Nation of Islam, or some people who like the spirits and they want to do astrology and they want to be Buddhist and Hindu. You know, it really depends on what you're into. It's a God for everybody. Like
Mhm.
whatever you deeply desire, you could find that in a different religion, and that has lead a lot of people to being confused because they don't want to. A lot of times, people want to appease their itching ears. Like you want to hear something, you want this thing to 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 be what you want to serve a God
That fits
that
your mold.
right, that fits your mode, that meets your expectation type of situation, but you're not open to say, hey, I have a finite mind. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a genius. Like, there are things that my mind cannot comprehend about God. And when God reveals this to me, I have to accept it because I am not the God. I'm not the superior being here, you know? But anyway, so when I started studying the word for myself and I discovered prophecies, I was blown away because I'm like, bro, if you are God, you need to be able to tell me, or you need to be able to predict. If you are omniscient, knowing everything, right? You need to be able to tell me something that is going to happen in the future if you know all. Because if you can't do that, I can't trust that you are God. You know what I mean? Because I accept that God is omniscient. And I'm not saying that, oh, God have to do this for me, but I believe that it's certain things that we go through in our Christian journey or certain things that has happened in history, God was trying to prepare us against. God prophesied all throughout the Old Testament. You know what I mean? He even say, hey, the gifts, the blessings, and the curses. Hey, if you all do not, if you do not hold up your end of the covenant, this bad thing is gonna happen, and it has happened. We live in a world where we like, yo, someone could have easily wrote this because this happened thousands of years before us, right? Someone could have easily wrote this and just summarize all the things, all the events that happened, and it wouldn't be prophetic. It would just be history from that perspective, right? But now when I look at Daniel, not only has not all the things in Daniel come to pass yet, right? But we see where Daniel existed before the Messiah, but they prophesied things that was to happen even after the Messiah. It prophesies when Jesus' second coming arrives. You know what I mean? And so because God was able to give this, not was able, because God gave this to Daniel and this came to pass, I'm like, yo, this is a higher being, like for sure. We cannot deny this higher being. And then the book of Daniel leads us to Jesus Christ specifically. So to me, that eliminate all other choice of God. Whoever this higher being was, he was like, yo, I want you to know my prince is coming. XYZ is going to happen. You know what I mean? And it did come to pass. And so that's why I believe in prophecy. I believe in Revelation, where they say the remnant church have the testimony of Christ and keep the commandments, and the testimony of Christ being the spirit of prophecy. Like I fully accept, and I am excited, and I love prophecy. You know what I mean? That's one of the core things to my faith. So if this, I don't know if this could help anybody out there wondering why Earl and I, young men, passionate for Christ, we could be, but we really could have been. We could be into science, Scientology, you know what I mean? We could be into all type of stuff. You catch what I'm saying? Like, we're talking to some. Yeah,
Anyway,
I think
sorry.
so. We could we could be into all type of different stuff. But why? What's the reason for my faith? What's the reason I believe in Jesus? Because of prophecy. It's undeniable, bro. We live in a world where we bombarded by all different truths. Someone can say, oh no, Horus came first. Jesus just copied Horus. Oh no, Muhammad is the last prophet, XYZ. We bombarded by all of this. How do we see between the wheat and the tares? I say I am firm. I have a firm belief in Christ because of the prophecies that he gave. When Jesus was on earth, he said, bro, the temple, bro, did not one stone will be left unturned. But like 30 years later, the Jewish revolt, where the Romans completely destroyed the temple. That's a prophecy that even Jesus said that one. You catch what I'm saying? But anyway, I on a crazy tangent.
No,
I on a crazy tangent.
it wasn't a tangent. It was needed and it was powerful. So it's all good, brother. All good.
So yeah, back to this prophecy though.
Yeah. And even talking about prophecies too, like Daniel 9 got like when some of the stuff get interpreted, like is wild. Like, and that's when you yeah. Oh my goodness, can't wait till we actually get there. Anyway, so where were we?
15.
And then so now this is essentially when then it happened when Daniel had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning, and then suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man, and I heard the man's voice between the banks of Ulai, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. I know Gabriel is the angel. So he came near me. So he came where I stood. And when he came out, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man, that this vision refers to the time of the end. Is this the first time we actually had Gabriel mentioned? Or was he mentioned before?
Yes. Yeah, I think this.
Because I know in the New Testament,
Yeah, I think
Gabriel had a run.
yeah, he had a run. I think this is the very first time. I think that's the very first time Gabriel is mentioned, and some people use this as a way to reject the Book of Daniel. Bro, the Book of Daniel's prophecies are so on point that people either say, "Oh no, this was written way after Daniel existed," right?
Mhm.
Because the fact that it prophesied that the Greeks and the Medo-Persians would take over, and then the Greeks, people was like, no, bro, this would have had to been written after the fact, right? Another reason why some people try to reject Daniel is because they say no other place in the Bible was an angel like given a name type of situation, right?
Mhm.
And so this would be so like this would be so this could be compelling, right? But then Jesus co-signed Daniel. You get what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
Yep.
like when Jesus said, he said, when you see the abomination that causes desolation as spoken in the book of Daniel, you get what I'm saying? So I like, bro, anybody in today's day and age trying to come with that, unless you don't believe in Christ, then that one don't hold up. But anyway, this is the first time angel is named, and first time we learn about Gabriel. But we
Okay.
also can learn about another angel too.
Yeah. And that one, I even have more confusion.
Boy,
More discussion on him than any other one. My goodness.
real talk.
All right. And so we see Gabriel told him, hey, this vision refers to the time of the end. So we're talking about end times prophecies here. And now as he was speaking with me, I was deep in sleep with my face towards the ground, but he touched me and stood me up. And he said, look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the matter of time in the latter time of indignation, for at the appointed time the end shall be. Which is so funny. I could just because we understand that Daniel was scared, right? And even when you see the angel, he was scared. You see, I was afraid and fell on my face when Gabriel appeared to him, right? And I could just see Gabriel's like, bro, I ain't got time for all of this, bro.
So you think Daniel passed out twice? Because
I
watch
think
this, right?
yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So this was a vision, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. I think Daniel was wide awake and he was having a vision, right?
Mhm.
And so he was seeing the meaning, and then suddenly, so he was afraid and he fell, right? For 17.
Mhm.
I was afraid and I fell on my face, but he said to me, understand, son of mine, that the vision refers to the time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in deep sleep with my face to the ground. So you was awake and you fell to your face when you see him, but when he started talking to you, you suddenly asleep.
In
I
deep
think
sleep.
Daniel faint. Yeah, I think Daniel faint right there, bro. Like I think he fall to his face and he pass out, bro. Like you know what I mean?
Do not
Because he
be
had
afraid.
the angel had to stand him up, bro. Like,
Hey, and this is when Gabriel really
listen.
started learning. Gabriel learning from Daniel. All right, when I appear, I need to start saying, "Do not be afraid."
Real talk, because I just pull up on him.
Hey, I just pull up on him, and this was the reaction. I can't go through this again. You're doing too much, buddy. Now I gotta wake you up, stand you up, and now I still gotta explain to you the stream. And then at the end of it, you faint again. Like, come on, man. So I gotta come back to
That's
you.
That's what I try to show you, bro.
Gabriel learned. He's like, boy, these humans, okay. Like, yeah. I gotta come correct.
I gotta
next
preface.
Time. Do not be afraid. I come in peace.
And we start off with that.
Peace be with you.
What?
Oh my. Okay. So, and as he was speaking to me, okay, and he said, look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation, for at an appointed time the end shall be. The ram which you saw with the two horns, we already said, was the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goes the kingdom of Greece. The large horn between his eyes was the first king. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in his place, the four kingdoms shall rise out of the nation, but not with its power. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. Interesting. He shall
Can I say
destroy
something?
Go for it.
Can I say something real quick? In a lot of time of their kingdom,
Exactly.
they just say the kingdom was Greece. So at the end of the Greek kingdom, this next king, which is the little horn we'll be talking about, shall rise. Even more credence that this is Rome. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm gonna say.
And then he shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without without human means. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told, was true. Therefore, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future.
Mercy.
And Daniel,
One
just
last.
fainted.
Yeah, and then he faint again. Hold on. 6 for many days and afterward. Wait, did it say he faint?
Yeah. Verse 27.
Oh yeah, and I Daniel fainted and was 6 foot. Yeah. Yeah. So now you see where you say it was interesting, which is verse 23 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressions have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Back to Revelation 13.
Go
Right?
for it.
And I saw one of his hairs as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon, which is the devil, right? Who gave authority to the beast.
Mm-hmm.
The dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast?
Exactly.
Who is able to make war with him?
He'll be mighty, but not by his own power. So I mean, it's someone else granting him in this
Exactly.
power. And you go to Revelation, because you just pointed out, you actually see by which power, like which
You
power is he
receive this
being
might.
mighty under? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll tell you, it's plenty moving parts, bro, but the connections, bro, I like it, dog. Like I like to see how connected it is, because sometimes I'll read this and I'll be like, whoa, I feel like I'm ready to faint.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So then, but I'll be honest with you, I listen to commentaries, I watch videos. I might listen to 3 different commenters, right? And they might have, obviously I listen to at least one Adventist commentary, but I listen to other people as well. And I see the vast differences, bro. I even had to comment under one of the people I listen to, like, bro, this ain't right, bro. Like the way you interpreted the Revelation 13, you ignoring certain things, bro. And you ignore, like you approach Revelation 13 as if this is a completely new beast. And I understand that if you just read it at face value, yes. But when you realize the attributes of the beast, the 7 heads, the 10 horns, the bear-like qualities, the leopard-like qualities, the lion-like qualities, I feel like it's hard to deny. That's like too blatant of like precise precision, right? That you would have to really, if you once you consider Daniel 7, you would have to be just denying the correlation between the two, you know? And so a lot of times you have, it's a lot of people with a lot of different um definitions or like translations of the prophecy. It's, bro, but once you finally see the connection between Daniel and Revelation, I don't think it's that hard to know that Rome is the last great empire, right? And I don't think it's that hard to know that out of Rome is going to be someone very pompous, right? Someone that's very blasphemous and someone that's waging war with the saints. And that will happen before the Son of Man returns. Like in this chapter, we don't have the redemption quality of it. Chapter 7 was a summary of all that was to come. Chapter 8 is a summary of the end times, but not the before Jesus comes. So it's about the excuse me. It's about the trials and tribulations that the saints will face before Jesus come. So before Jesus come, is the pompous little horn gonna have an army. It's gonna wage war with the people on earth, and it's gonna wage war with heaven. It's gonna wage war with the King of Kings, well, the Prince of Princes. It's gonna wage war with the truth. It's gonna trample over the truth. And we know that this little horn is Roman. It's Roman. What is the correlation? What is the correlation? So a lot of times, like I've even heard people say that Adventists, like we pick on the papacy, we pick on papal Rome, you know what I mean, or the Catholic Church. But at the end of the day, the Bible is pointing us to the Roman influence on Christianity. The Bible is pointing us there, and it's letting us know this is going to be the last nation, the last kingdom before the stone that the builder refused, or the stone that's not cut with human hands destroys it, before Jesus' kingdom comes on earth, you know? And when we get to Revelation, we know that the dragon would be upset with the saints, you know what I'm saying, and persecute the saints. We see that in Daniel, and we see that in Revelation. We see these things come into fruition, and we can't ignore that. Saints have already been persecuted. During the Protestant Reformation, a lot of people were burned at the stake. They were called heretics just because they wanted to read the Bible and interpret the Bible and print the Bible for themselves, right? But Jesus didn't come then. Jesus didn't come yet. So that leads me to believe that this prophecy is not complete. That this prophecy is still actually going to happen how they say it's going to happen, you know? So even though we've had, you know, kings in the past and during the Bible times, during Jesus' times, kings that wanted to kill people, like even the Roman emperors during the time of the apostles, they was issuing, like Emperor Nero, these type of people, they was killing Christians. You know what I mean? But Jesus didn't return. His second coming didn't come yet. So there's still a time, right? There's still a time when the saints of God will suffer persecution under this beast's power. We know that it's the little horn that's going to reign during the time when the stone is going to come, you know what I'm saying? When the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man comes, you see what I'm saying, to establish the kingdom. In this chapter, we see another vision from Daniel, this time about a ram, a goat, and the little horn. We later learn that the ram represented the Median and Persian Empire, and the goat represented the Greek Empire, and the little horn, which was eerily similar to Daniel 7, must represent the Roman Empire. Here we learn that this little horn will magnify himself and will destroy many, and even challenge the Prince of the Most High, but in the end, he will be broken without human means. We still have more visions from Daniel to come. But we'll talk more about that on the next episode of A Breath of Fresh Air. Tonight's episode included voice acting by your host, Nakhaz. Remember to go ahead and research on your own in order to get a more firm understanding of tonight's episode. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. You can follow us on social media at A Breath of Fresh Air Pod on Instagram and BOFAPOD on Twitter. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.